Title: The Last Broadcast. The quaint little town of Brookhaven had long been known for its charming houses and friendly residents, with an air of peace that rarely wavered. Nestled at the edge of the perimeter, however, was Maplewood High, a seemingly ordinary school, but one with an infamous reputation. It was once home to the revered Brookhaven Radio Club. But a tragic incident involving the club nearly a decade ago cast a long, dark shadow over the town. The story went like this. A group of budding young broadcasters had set up to record what they hoped would be their final, triumphant show. Each account of what occurred that night was shrouded in mystery. Some claimed to have heard ghastly whispers, while others recounted laughter echoing through the vacant halls in a tone that quickly turned hysterical. When the club's final broadcast aired, it abruptly cut off with a chilling scream, and the club members were never found. Years later, as a curious sophomore, Lydia found herself drawn to these tales. After months of researching the incident and meeting with skeptical classmates who suffered from her relentless questioning, she made a bold decision. She would investigate the abandoned radio club room on Halloween night. As she walked toward the dilapidated building, the biting wind whipped around her, rattling the aged windows of the school. With a flashlight in hand and her heart racing, Lydia stepped inside, the heavy door groaning in protest. Dust motes swirled in the beam of light, dancing like spirits in the ether. Posters of past radio shows clung to the peeling walls, their colors muted from age, while vintage microphones sat dusty and forgotten on the once grand studio table. Trying to push aside her nerves, Lydia set to work rummaging through old recordings. As she searched, her fingers grazed boxes filled with tapes and cassettes, most labeled with indecipherable scrawls. Among them, one title caught her eye: Unaired, the final broadcast. Her heart pounded in a mixture of excitement and dread. Knowing the stories of the club's demise, she hesitated, her instincts warning her to turn back. But ambition conquered fear, and she found a cassette player in the corner that still looked mostly intact. After fumbling with the dusty wires, she finally connected it and inserted the tape, her fingers trembling as she pressed play. At first, there was static, and then the familiar sound of voices filled the room. They were young and vibrant, full of chatter and laughter, the kind that erased the silence of impending doom. But the cheer did not last. The chilling undertones began to seep into the conversation like a thick fog. Lydia listened intently, feeling her skin prick with anxiety as the dialogue twisted into arguments, accusations, and hushed whispers. Then came the eerie silence, a silence so thick it could be felt. It lingered in the air, almost palpable. Lydia's heart raced as muffled screams erupted in the background, startling her so much that she nearly jumped. The voices escalated into utter chaos. She felt her breath hitch in her throat. She had to stop the tape. But her fingers froze above the buttons. Suddenly, a high-pitched voice, sounding eerily like her own, pierced through the noise. "Lydia, help us." Her heart dropped. Was that her? The room was freezing now, and her flashlight flickered ominously. She stood up, ready to flee, but the cassette player crackled to life again with a single, chilling whisper. "Stay with us." Quote, panic seized her, and she lunged for the door. It swung shut with a resonant bang, shaking the walls, plunging her back into darkness. Frozen in place, she felt the cold rip through her as the lights flickered, and shadows began to surge around her. The screams grew louder, echoing in her mind. The voices intertwined, pleading, taunting, her name weaved into their chorus. "Stay. Be part of the final broadcast. Give us what we need." Quote, Lydia managed to wrench the door open and bolted down the hall, the laughter now rising to a deafening crescendo. Her heart raced as she dashed toward the exit, convinced the voices were right behind her, desperate to consume her. Just as she reached the door, she felt a cold hand on her shoulder, gripping tightly. She turned, eyes wide, only to confront the ghostly figures of the radio club, their faces frozen in terror, mouths open as if they were screaming but no sound escaped. "Please, help us," they gasped in unison, their spectral forms flickering, fading, slipping like shadows into the night. Summoning every ounce of courage, Lydia wrenched herself free and burst outside into the crisp October air, gasping for breath. The last echoes of their cries faded behind her, leaving only the howling wind and the petrifying realization that Brookhaven was not quite the friendly town she thought it was. From that day on, no one spoke of the radio club, and the tape she had found was never mentioned again. But under the veil of night, Lydia realized she would never truly escape the once promising dream. A dream that turned into a nightmare teetering on the edge of silence, one that hungered for an audience that would never arrive. And sometimes, late at night, she could still hear those haunted voices whispering her name, desperately waiting for a return to the airwaves.